Hi.
Hey, it's Jordan. I'm here in beautiful Virginia. Makes me kind of upset. I live in polluted, gross New York City. I'm here with a mother and daughter who are just removed from over a month protesting on your property up in trees. You are protesting the Mountain Valley Pipeline, which is, what do they call it, a natural gas pipeline that now they are trying to ram through the Appalachian Trail here, which is some of the most pristine land we have in the country. I wanted to ask you just, obviously, mother and daughter, when did you first hear that they were putting it through your land? Did what was the communication between you guys and the oil company or the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission? Like, how did it happen? Because it seems like eminent domain was kind of rushed through very quickly.
That it was. They approached me 3.5 years ago, excuse me, and said, "We want to survey your land." And at first I went, "For what?" They said, "Well, we're looking for pipeline. We're going to put pipeline." And no, but they came anyway. And we ran them off. And then the cops sided with them. We'd call the cops every time, and they would go, "Oh, well, they've got the right to be here." Well, I didn't give them the right. And the state police would run them off, or the landowner could run them off. And they came on my property, what, 2 years ago? And I was called. I had a kidney stone and left the doctors, and I couldn't hardly move. And my sister in law called and said, "Red, they're on your property. Get up here." I come up, and they have to park on the road. So they were up the road here and climbed up, and were over in the top of my orchard. And I was actually climbing up the side of the mountain to go after them. And every time I got anywhere near them, the cops would say, "Oh, I need her back. Call her back. There's something important." And I'd come down, and they'd have nothing to say. I left 3 times, and they called me back 3 times. And it was for nothing. And then one of the main cops, whatever his name, Poindexter or whatever his name was, comes up to me after they start coming out of my property and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, there was a misunderstanding. I didn't realize you were the property owner." And everybody there went, "No, we introduced her. You knew exactly who she was." But they were right there with MVP the whole way. Just, they had their backs.
And can you kind of give me a background? Because I understand that this is like not just any property, but it like has been passed down generation to generation. I hear George Washington gave us a gift, but I don't want to get it wrong.
The
That's wrong.
Queen of England
Okay.
as a land grant. I'm actually the seventh generation to be here. So it has been in the family for a very long time.
So the Queen of England gave it as a land grant. Okay. So with originally when the police or whomever told you they have a right to be here, what was their right to be here if they did not yet have eminent domain? What was the reason given to you?
They needed to survey, and that's the only reason that was given to me. Um, they had the right to survey our property. And because the Terrys still owned a great deal of property, they decided to go through every one of our properties. And it's gotten very, very ugly. Um, when they sent the help me out, minor. They had to check for artifacts first.
Yeah.
So when they sent the archaeologist down first, and Coles had talked with them, and the guy was so excited that he'd found some major finds on our property. And he goes, "I can't wait to get back tomorrow and see what else is there." Well, MVP refused to send him back. And then they found some stuff on Elizabeth's property, or Liz, his sister. And the archaeologist every day would give her what he found. And this day, she was waiting on what he had, and he got in his truck and drove off. So she followed him, and he pulled over and gave her something that dated back to the pyramids. And she goes, "Why did you drive off?" And he goes, "I was told to get in my truck and leave." And then MVP drove up and said, "You don't say anything about this." Which she didn't for a while, and we were like, "What the hell's your problem?" But we did raise enough hell that right now they're digging up her entire hayfield and cattle farm over here that she leases out. We had no knowledge that they were coming. They came in and started setting up structures on her property. And we flew in the Sax Indians from the Dakotas, and they looked at it and said, and they were archaeologists, they said they've never seen such a shitty job done on any kind of dig. Right on top of one of the little sections, there was 3 arrowheads sitting right there on top. And he goes, "This was incredible." So they got in touch with FERC, and there was supposed to be a Native American on that dig. And FERC pretty much dismissed them and said there was no reason to have Indians involved. But by law, we should have had a Native American on that dig the whole time. And MVP has decided that they're just going to dig up the area the pipeline's going in and get all the artifacts out, and then they're going to put that pipeline in. Well, that's not usually how an archaeology dig goes. But, profit is so much more important than any kind of history we have, or water, or air, or anything else. So they're still over there. And the lawyers called her and said, "You need to get those people out of the trees."
They tried to use us essentially as a bargaining chip. What was supposed to happen was that she would get her artifacts back. Like, that was already established. And then MVP's lawyer tried to use my mother and I, mostly my mother, they weren't fully aware that I was in the tree, as a bargaining chip of like, "All right, we'll give you your artifacts if you convince her to come out of the tree." No,
Too different.
that's not how that works, period.
Well, what's interesting to me is they'll give you your artifacts. It sounds like they stole your artifacts.
Exactly what it was. And then they were trying to use that as a bargaining chip when they'd already established that those don't belong to them, period. They belong to my aunt, and she was supposed to rightfully get them. So everything about this been,
Underhanded.
yes.
Sketchy. Yeah. Sleazy, even.
Have you ever played a game with a kid and they're losing, so then they're like, "Oh, new rule that you've never heard before"? That's kind of what this entire battle feels like.
And it's interesting you say that, because there's another, tilt it to me, there's another tree protest going on in Giles County, and the National Forest Service, they keep like zoning off, blocking the road, and they keep changing the rules so that, basically people supporting, I don't know her real name, but they're calling her Nutty. Basically, so she can't have people close to her,
They're
because
denying her food and water.
Yeah.
Spotlighter. They've got generators running to.
Under her to try to smoke her out.
Yeah, it's everything about it is civil rights violations, and then just morally wrong.
And I want to just tell the audience, so you know, because I've been researching into it. So FERC, which is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, literally has not denied a pipeline permit since 1986. Do you know what happened in 1986? I was born. They have not denied a pipeline permit since 1986, borrowing a phrase from somebody from the Delaware Riverkeepers organization that sued FERC. That's not a regulatory commission. That's just a rubber stamp. They literally, and a lot of their funding, okay, they get a budget like other government agencies, but FERC is the only one I know of that literally charge the oil company fees. So, for example, the oil company is the one that hires the third-party contractor who is supposed to review the environmental risks for a pipeline like this. It was the same thing for the Dakota Access Pipeline, where Energy Transfer Partners was hiring the third-party contractor for the environmental assessment. So it's really the oil company paying for kind of a show. The company that they hire is going to tell them what they want to hear. Wanted to ask you, I mean, the whole Appalachian Trail, you're talking, I mean, it's not even known how many waterways. I mean, it's estimated, but you have waterways, farmland, animal life, artifacts, all that. Can you kind of talk about all the things that are at risk, not just on your land, but, you know, from here to West Virginia?
It'll definitely affect the water. So the tree cutting the trees are the first barrier for soil erosion and for cleaning the water. So you remove those, you've already started a process you can't undo. And then when they start blasting to put this pipeline in, they want it 10 feet in the ground. And it's a 14? It's a 42-inch pipeline that they want in the ground. So blasting and digging and moving of all of that dirt is going to, you're going to have silt and erosion and everything like that. Even if they never cross a waterway, all of that will end up in the waters. But they are crossing waterways multiple times.
Yeah, the creek I was next to, they're crossing 23 times up here. And that is a Tier 3 waterway that leads right into Roanoke.
And it's not like these pipelines don't leak. You had in Pennsylvania a pipeline contaminated 15 wells just last year. And the pipeline company just got fined, which is nothing for them for this, but contaminated land there. What you were talking about, the sediment that goes in the water.
And even perfect case scenario, this pipeline never leaks. Just the damage they're going to do to put it in. We're on karst topography right now. It's a bunch of limestone caves behind me. The limestone filters the water. The minute they start blasting to do that, they'll probably ruin this well, my well, a lot of the water that people use and drink up here before they even put the pipeline in, and it's got the fracked natural gas running through it. Mm-hmm. And then after that, yes, they do leak. They do explode. And the newer ones do it more frequently than the older ones. And there's a company with a horrific track record. They're the ones putting it in. And they've never put it in such steep and dangerous terrain. They've got a terrible track record. And it's the largest pipeline they've ever put in. It's going to be awful. There's no way nothing cannot go wrong. Right.
And one of the FERC commissioners, again the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, I was a 2-to-1 vote basically to give them eminent domain. One of the FERC commissioners,
for an organization that's supposed to have 5 members,
so 2 seats are vacant. But one of the commissioners was pointing out they've never seen a pipeline on this scale, in this kind of land, the steep terrain, also. When you're talking about pipelines going under this kind of land, if there's an explosion, the blast radius could be potentially
2.5 miles.
Everything will be dead in 2.5 miles. And that's all but my son. And if he's visiting, that wipes us out. I mean, my sister-in-laws both live in town, and my brother-in-law's up here, some and some not. So that will wipe out the 7th generation of Terrys pretty much. 2.5 mile, that's all my friends, all my neighbors, and all my family gone. And the firefighters up here said, Red, there's nothing we can do. It'll take them a while to turn the gas off, so it'll be fueled by the gas. And he said, there's no way we can fight it on this steep terrain. And we had a lot of gypsy moth damage a few years ago. And if you look behind you, you see dead standing, just kindling for anything that happens. When we lost all the oaks and a lot of the apples to the gypsy moths, we had wildlife starving up here. Deers, their fawns, starving. So now they're going through and cutting the rest of my oaks, or a huge portion. Where I had her set, I had a very nice stand of oaks, and they took them all down.
The day we came down, the day after we came down, they just went through and cut. Both of our sits were located near waterways. Hers a larger portion of the creek, mine a tiny little babbling brook that literally comes out of the ground 1,000 feet from where I was sitting. And then just wetlands between the two of us. And they came through the day after and cut every single tree down between. There were no silt fences installed. There was nothing to mitigate the damage. Trees are laying in the creeks, which are not supposed to be. But she was saying when it explodes, it'll take a while for it to burn out. And that's because it's such a rural area that MVP has stated they're going to put a shutoff valve every 20 miles instead of every 3 miles like they would do in a more populated area. So when I've tried to educate people, they understand the facts. When they finally hear them. But to kind of drive the point home, I tell them that when this pipeline explodes, it'll probably be pieces of my house raining down on their house in Roanoke, and that this really is their backyard too. They should be invested and be interested and understand the issues at stake here. Not just, oh, it's not physically in my backyard that it's going through. It is. All of your water starts up here, your property values, your site views. People are coming to Roanoke and Virginia because of the lands. And so all those tourist dollars are going to start to dry up. If your water is damaged, nobody's is going to want to kayak and stand up paddleboard in the Roanoke River anymore.
But you're also potentially talking about a massive forest fire. I mean,
that too. Not even forest fire is going to be the end effect. It's going to be a giant explosion first.
Kind of like the volcano that just went off in Hawaii. We're going to have the volcano effect where, yeah, it's going to rain down on everybody. And it's sad that I feel like we're the sacrificial lambs because they don't know what's going to happen. We sort of know what's going to they know what's going to happen. But they can go, that 42-inch didn't work. Let's go ahead and dial it down a little. Maybe the next explosion won't take out so much.
And what's really striking to me, I mean, I'm not from Virginia, but I've read up on it. I mean, there's no objective case to be made that these are necessary. I mean, other pipelines are at like 50% capacity. So there's really no need for 2 extra pipelines other than both of these pipelines, Mountain Valley and the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, which is its kind of like evil stepbrother. I guess the oil companies are guaranteed a 14% return on investment from FERC. I mean, it's a very, very corrupt thing. Yeah. But is Virginia like dying for more natural gas? Is this area dying for more natural gas?
It's not even going to benefit us. Everything in this pipeline is moving from point A to point B to be exported. Virginians aren't going to see any of this gas. People hear the word gas and they think that my mother and I were stopping them from getting cheaper gas for their car or cheaper gas for their home. And it's not staying here. It's not going in your gas tank. It's not going to heat your home. It's being exported so a couple shareholders can get a 14% return. And they used eminent domain to be able to claim that. They used the Natural Gas Act from 1938. You're saying pipelines the process for that hasn't been updated in 30 years. We're using an act from 1938 for Roanoke. Roanoke Gas has a 0.5% interest in this. And so that's how they were able to say, oh, now it's a utility. Now we can use eminent domain. We're going to condemn your property and take it.
And by the way, it's not like if they get eminent domain, the pipeline company still needs other permits. So theoretically, they could be granted eminent domain. They could be digging up your property, damaging artifacts, what have you. And that they need other permits. This is going on in New Jersey too, where eminent domain's been granted for a pipeline and they're still waiting on permits from the New Jersey Department of Environmental Quality. So it's kind of like, I mean, again, pipelines generally get permission, but you're essentially stealing people's lands, desecrating people's lands, when it's not a foregone conclusion that the pipeline will be, all the permits will come. Frankly, for Standing Rock Sioux, if it happened at a different for the Dakota Access Pipeline, if it happened at a different time when there wasn't a new president coming in, that pipeline wasn't going to go through. President Obama denied the final permit. I'd say several months late, but that's neither here or there. But it's only because there was a new president coming. So that's what people don't get. And, you know, it's funny because I interviewed a real conservative Republican in Texas on their land, and they were digging up a natural gas pipeline through their backyard where the pipe was 400 yards from their window. And you see now, like, whether you're progressive, an environmentalist, or a George W. Bush loving conservative, everybody's kind of coming together because their land is getting stolen so that, you know, oil companies could make more money.
Absolutely. And it's not a bipartisan issue. It's a human issue. Whether you look at it through property, whether you look at it for the environmental issues, whatever stance you want to take, these pipelines are not necessary. They're not. It's been proven. The end buyer is the parent company. Like, is that not the snake eating its own tail type deal? And because of that, we have a bomb planted in our backyard. I get to, that may or may not explode at any given time. My water gets to be damaged because of that. Roanoke's drinking water gets to be damaged because of that. It's infuriating.
So let's get to the tree sit. You guys were up there for 34 days?
She was up there one day longer than I was.
Okay. So how did this happen? Were you guys like on a Saturday night, like talking about this and like, you know what, we got to climb those trees? How did the idea come?
I think honestly, we'd probably kicked it around since we
we
heard
found out.
that they were going to actually try to put this pipeline, that it wasn't just talk, that when people came out and looked at this terrain and it didn't immediately scare them off, they're like, oh no, we can still do this. We're like, oh shit, they're going to put this in. And then the Peters Mountain tree sits came up and we're like, holy crap, people are actually doing this. Like, it can be done. It is slowing them down. It is stopping them. And it was 3 days to build the sits.
No, actually, I took off and I told my boss, I said, I can't sleep, I can't think, I can't do this anymore. I have to do something. I said, I'm going in the trees. And I guess my daughter and my husband called my son and said, your mom's losing it and she's going into the trees. And my son was here. I took off Monday. My son was here Wednesday, where he took leave. And he and I went and bought some stuff to start building. And we walked all the Terry property in this section to find a tree that they could not extract us from without, you know, you can bring in a ladder truck and take someone out, but you can't cross a swamp, 2 creeks, come down a steep embankment, have trees all in your way. That would be a little more hazardous. So, yeah, first thing we did was we walked the property to see where we could put them where they couldn't get us out. And then it was, let's get them up. And we had 3 tree sets. My son was in one up in the top of the orchard, and his was the highest and the shakiest. And he was 40 feet up. And they had kind of quit coming around. And
They being the Mountain Valley Pipeline surveyors or whoever they wanted to say they were, they're not required to tell us their name or who they work for or what they're doing here.
they wore masks.
A lot of them
Which is
wear
against the law.
something to cover their face, a bandana, a mask.
I could attest to that because in the Dakota Access Pipeline, I was there 7 times. I mean, I was followed. My car was followed when I was working for the Young Turks. You see people that you don't know if they're in the mafia or ranchers. You know, there's the pipeline company, then there's private security pipeline companies hire, and then there's some off the books type folks that they hire.
Yes, absolutely. And all of that, all of those tactics have been employed here too. They've definitely, VP and or global security have harassed citizens. They followed them in their cars. There's been bully and scare tactics since they realized that the citizens aren't just going to roll over and let this happen. But I had a similar conversation with my boss that she did. I sat down in his office. I went, hypothetically, let's say I have to leave on really short notice for an unknown amount of time to live in a tree. Like, are you okay with that? And he's like, do you even like camping? No, I hate camping. I am a princess, but I don't feel that I have any other choice. We've gone through every other legal aspect of this. Not that what we did was illegal. It was a peaceful protest on our own property, but we've gone through the hearings and the meetings and giving them the information that they request. And when they say, oh, we did a bat survey and it was a one-night bat survey.
They said they
How
couldn't
much-
afford to spend any more time on that. Couldn't afford it.
And yet we're in a corridor of migratory endangered bats. It's just...
I'll tell you what they could afford. The parent company of EQT, Midstream Partners, parent company of Mountain Valley Pipeline, which is what they were protesting, gave then candidate Ralph Northam, he's now the governor, $50,000. Dominion Energy gave him $200,000. This pipeline, Mountain Valley Pipeline, will be crossing Atlantic Coast Pipeline. Dominion Energy is the largest partner in Atlantic Coast Pipeline, which is another dangerous pipeline. And EQT gave him $50,000. And I also don't have the exact number, but I understand the oil companies donated to his inauguration, Governor Ralph Northam. I'll get to Northam in a second, but I want to talk about sitting up in that tree. I mean, I just had back surgery, so obviously it would be terrible for me. But I mean, what were you running on? Adrenaline, the support from people that came. A lot of people came to camp out in support. How did you exercise up there? Like, what was it like being up there? Because there's got to be some times very cold, freezing nights. Fast forward to hot.
Super hot. For me, the people that came to visit and those that camped are literally the only thing. Well, 4 years of rage with this pipeline, but the people kept me going. I was 35 feet up in the air, and it's that in itself to be on a 4x8 sheet of plywood, and I couldn't use the whole thing based on the construction. I was essentially in a little TP-esque situation. Was remarkably isolating. And to have to shout down to my brother, who was my ground support, and the people that came to visit, or my boyfriend, or my father, or people that drove 4 hours, that is what kept me going. The schools that came to sing to me, or the musicians that played, or the people that drove 4 minutes or 4 hours to say thank you for what you were doing. We appreciate it. You're doing an amazing job. That's what kept me going for the days that it was rainy and I couldn't talk to anybody, or the days that it was cold or miserable, and knowing that I had armed cops under me all of the time watching everything that I did. I don't know what it was for you. We weren't able to speak a whole lot just because of my cell phone. I had 2 battery packs and I'd gone through them, and I'd dropped my solar charger. So that was a crushing blow. It was a very dark day at my sit. And then just to be cut off from everybody. Isolation is a remarkably strong torture tactic. So.
And you?
Mine was just pure love. Pure love for this mountain and my family and my neighbors and my friends. That kept me going.
I was watching them taking you down, and I couldn't tell if it was just remarkable ineptitude on their part.
It was
Or
There were several factors involved with that. They brought in a remarkably heavy ladder. It was apparently a 300-pound ladder. It was starting to sprinkle, so they were concerned about that. And apparently, the first course of action was to go by the book. And that means when you set up a ladder for removal, you put it on the left side and then you put it like 4 rungs above. But on the left side of Mom is a tree, which you put a ladder on it, it starts to do this. So the ground support was, tensions were high, to say the least. Most of that crew had just watched me rappel down, and there was a feeling of elation and relief from a lot of them. And then there was a parade of people to go watch Mom come out, just a convoy. And then to watch them struggle with this ladder, and Mom's camp been sort of she's been the face of this from the get-go. So she usually had more support there. And to watch these, I was definitely one of the people on the ground shouting ridiculous things at them like, hey, do you want us to do that for you? We've got practice. Or, that's my mother. Could you maybe get your shit together? Or they finally listened to us and put the ladder against the sit, which is the most stable place for it to be. It was the place where he could go up and assess her. He being a fire rescue individual that we requested. He was very sympathetic to our cause. He's actually going to be affected by it as well. And it's also where Mom would be able to step out and get onto the ladder. And they went to lower the rungs and the ladder dropped too far. And we're all shouting at them. And yeah, tensions were high to say the least. And then she comes out, she's not even on the ground, and Mountain Valley Pipeline is showing up on the access road behind her to try to remove the sit. We had been informed that they were going to actually cut the tree down itself, and that there was almost a lynching of humans. The cops immediately swarmed and told them to back up, they were disrupting the peace, that they were inciting a riot. That's what almost happened. And I believe that they showed up, that they had the audacity to show up with this crew of 200 people strong that are remarkably anti-pipeline, and the leader of this resistance is not even on the ground yet. But that's a whole...
Beyond just the vile nature of what they're doing, a lot of food donations came in. They would not provide it to you, I understand. You couldn't get sunscreen, I was told. Talk about it seems like in one breath, I heard from the governor's office and the cops, we support their for first protection, but they wouldn't depriving you of some things that you needed.
Roanoke County put out a press release, and I don't know the exact date, and I apologize, but time is weird when you don't do anything. Yeah. So I know it was a Thursday that Roanoke County put out a press release saying, we are not denying them anything. And then I got that information Friday. And then I got my first meal provided by Roanoke County, and we caught them off guard. So they sent up pizza and water and an apple. And as the last apple I got, and a Chewy bar. And that was on Sunday. And that was lunch. But Sunday's dinner was bologna. And after that, we would have to request meals. But they hadn't worked out the kinks of that plan yet. So if I asked the officer below me, like, may I have a hot meal and water, he would have to call that up to the chain of command. And there was a logistical battle, apparently, of getting us food. And then it was eventually worked out, like 3-4 days later, that they would just schedule us meals. We would get breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But breakfast, lunch, and dinner would consist of 2 bologna sandwiches on white bread, 2 cookies, and a bag of juice, and a bottle of water if they remembered to bring it.
How kind of them?
Yeah, it was prepared by the jail and then trucked 45 minutes up on the mountain to be handed to us. And I know that they were assembly line made probably that first day and then just stuck in a fridge. Oh, and 2 mustard packets that probably counted as our vegetables.
I know that probably a lot of it you don't remember because the whole experience was surreal. But did you ever have kind of those moments where you're just sitting up in that tree thinking, like, is this America? I have to sit up in my tree to stop them from destroying my land? Because you hear a lot of this conservative talk about, don't tread on me, and you come on my land, I'm going to shoot you. And it just seems surreal that a mother and a daughter, obviously you're close, would have to take these measures.
Yeah. Oh, it absolutely was for me. There were multiple times thinking, like, I never envisioned this ever. But I know I've got some probably remarkably strong mental coping skills going on. I've pushed down a lot of the bad days, and they'll come back and
I
bite
do
me. But
not. I suffer, I think, from Tourette's, and they push all my right buttons. And they came in with their chainsaws and started cutting.
cannot tell you
And
anything that she told them.
Sergeant comes up with a bullhorn, and I've got people cutting my fucking trees. And he's yelling for me to come down. And I would not open my tarps for him. And he's yelling, and he's yelling, and he's yelling. And those chainsaw, and I hear my big trees dropping. And I throw open that tarp, and I say, fuckers. You are the Roanoke County Police, and you are supposed to protect your Roanoke County citizens. You're not supposed to be sucking MVP's dicks. And I said, when did this happen? And he looks up at me, and I said, and I think you still got some on your chin. So go fuck yourself and get out of here. I'm not coming down. And evidently they didn't think a 61-year-old woman
Had the tenacity to do that.
was supposed to say that kind of shit
Also
while
that.
they were taking out her forest. I had to cut my trees for the gypsy moths. The guy was related to us that did the timber, and he took great care in what he did. And he told us, if we can cut them before they die, you'll have your hardwood forest back in 100 years. But if they die, it'll take you 200 years to get a hardwood forest back. It takes an oak tree 22 years to develop an acorn. So I'm sitting up there watching him cut all my trees, thinking, I won't see it again. Yeah, I got ugly a few times.
Yeah.
I also understand that they cut an apple orchard that was like 150 years old.
My apple trees. I had pippins were the big thing up here, and a lot of my trees have died. Gypsy moth like apples too. And at the top of the orchard, I had a couple of pippins still producing, and I had a huge Rome. I'm calling it a Rome. One of my neighbors said that's probably what it was. It was probably as big as that little oak in front of the pine. The tree produced beautifully, and I'd snack on the apples occasionally, but mainly the bear, the deer, the raccoons, every animal up here. Just you could see where they'd come through and eat on them. And yeah, I wasn't making a living from them, but they meant a lot to me. And they marked them all. I haven't been up there. I can't go up there right now.
Yeah,
But they
it's
cut them all
behind
down.
us.
And yeah, Massey made the comment at one of the court hearings
MVP's
that,
lawyer.
well, everybody has a favorite tree. That's not going to stop us. And then I have an oak tree out here in the back. It's a scarlet oak. Was a scarlet oak. That when it was coming up, I thought, what a wonderful place for an oak, because it was kind of in the corner of the field and had room to grow, and I thought that'll be nice. So when it was about this big, I marked it so I wouldn't bush hog it. And it started producing acorns a couple years ago. And it looks like one of the pictures you see of the single tree that's just absolutely gorgeous. Well, that was in their path too. her little tree house she built while we were cutting wood. That was in her path too, in an
That
oak.
that's where I lost it.
Yeah, that was in a nice oak, but they don't care. People have favorite trees. Why should they? Why shouldn't they make profit just because we have favorite trees?
And let's not forget, obviously, this is emotional. When you deforestation is one of the contributions to climate change. This is all not just for the immediate area. Obviously, the concern is explosions and water and all these things, but all of this cumulatively that's happening all over America, accelerated under President Trump. It's now, pipeline season like never before. It's all contributing to climate change, which every expert that's not bought off says we need to lower the global temperature very, very fast to under 2 degrees. Now, I heard you say something when you came down aimed at President Trump, if you want to repeat that, because I thought it was so eloquent in what you said. It was basically, about where does he expect everyone to live?
I don't remember that. I remember asking, he might not believe in global warming, but does he believe in pollution? And he's polluting our planet.
Yeah, there's a lot of adrenaline that day. I
Yeah,
can't remember.
I am, polluting the water. Since when is profit more important than water? When is profit more important than people? And I don't understand that. And I told someone, I said, the Terrys, we have right much property up here. And we've been the land stewards for this property, and we've tried to keep it under, not developed, mainly wildlife. Our bear population has quadrupled. Our deer, our raccoons, our skunks, our fox. I mean, we have the huge owls. You can hear them at night. The whippoorwills down there, which are endangered. They're down there nesting on the ground. And they've just dropped trees where they're going to bulldoze all that shit. Why is profit more important than the planet? Why is the people in West Virginia and Pennsylvania that have been complaining to their governors and to anyone that'll listen that they can't drink their water? They can no longer drink their water. The gas company has to bring water in for them to drink, and to do that they have to sign gag orders so they can have drinking water. And it's the play-by-play book for the gas companies and the oil companies. You work the people, you wear them down because they've got the money. You wear them down, you go through their resources fighting you, and then you destroy everything they own. And then they're just grateful to have you bring them clean water because you've poisoned everything around them. You've poisoned their livestock, you've poisoned their pets, you've given their kids cancer. You've got people walking around with boils all over their face. People who worked for the pipeline have radiation poisoning from dealing with the wastewater. You're dumping the wastewater on the roads to melt snow. The scientists have said, the half-life of some of these chemicals they're dumping out is 1,000 years. So why are our fucking politicians letting this happen? Why are they able to poison people because someone's contributing to their campaign so they can be the big guy in the White House? Fuck them all. They're supposed to care about the people. They're not supposed to be destroying the people. And this damn plant they're putting over in the poor black neighborhood where they're going to put the
compression station.
The compression station. Who the hell's going to fight that? They're already poor, but they're going to walk over the poor. And I have a relative who lives right up the road from me. He planned on making that his retirement home, and they were going to run the pipeline through his land. And they said, "Oh, don't you worry, we're going to give you about 30 grand." And he looked at him and said, "I pay that quarterly." And he said, "Last year alone, I made $1.6 million, and I will keep you in court till hell freezes over." And guess what? They missed his fucking land. They rearranged everything just to miss his land. Because they don't want anyone that can fight back. They're a big fucking bully, and they don't want to meet another bully. Well, they pissed off a redhead. And we don't forget and we don't forgive. They have flattened. MVP never leaves their cars. They always leave a guard. But when my sister-in-law drove up, when they were surveying, she had to park and follow the surveyors. When she came back and drove home, something was wrong with her car. She pulled in and there was a screw in her tire, because we always get screws in our tires on the road. And a couple days later, when she came up, drove home, oh, a nail in her tire, because we have nails all over our road up here. That's how we keep them, screws and nails. But they won't leave their vehicles unguarded, because God knows they wouldn't have tires on theirs. But yeah, they keep guards everywhere. And when we came on them the other day, when they were putting up the blue and white signs everywhere,
The LOD.
tinted windows, wouldn't roll them down, talking out the top. Who are you? None of your business. Where's the guy in charge? None of your business. My son took a picture and he says, you don't have permission to take my picture. And we have to delete it. But every time one of us came through, everybody on them had cameras taking pictures. She had quite an experience the other night when she came out of the tree.
Yeah, I think there was a car sitting in the road. It was 2:00 in the morning, and
Sure.
I went outside to get my cat. I'd heard coyotes, and I noticed taillights kind of in the curve, and I'm like, am I imagining things? It's 2:00 in the morning, and then this car turned on, and headlights hit me. So somebody was sitting in a blind curve in the middle of the road in the middle of the night, and I run inside, and I'm like, so I yell at Jonathan, my boyfriend. I'm like, there's a car in the road, and we watch it turn around, and it was gone long enough to have gone to the end of the road and turned around, and it pulls into the driveway next to me and backs out, and it's facing our house again. And somebody gets out of the driver's seat and somebody gets out of the passenger seat. The interior light of the truck never goes on. And you would think if you're doing something sketchy and you're innocent, you would be like, hey, lost my dog, or something fell off my truck. You'd explain yourself. When we yelled, hey, they were like, hey, and they got in the trucks and drove off. Like, and it could be completely unrelated, or it could not be. And I don't know.
Well, that's the other thing. Like you guys are saying, they're kind of, it's not just trying to threaten your land, but threaten you as and your safety, kind of meant psychological warfare.
Absolutely. There have been neighbors that have been followed by the surveyors or global security. We're not sure because, again, they don't have to tell us, and they do not consent to their photo being taken, but they've got files on all of us. They've taken pictures of us, our vehicles, our license plates.
Yeah.
They know our habits. I know that sounds really conspiracy theory-ish, but it's not. Like, this is what is happening.
Oh, no. It's not, because CNN didn't cover it, but Dakota Access Pipeline, The Intercept, did great reporting. I mean, they had intelligence reports every day. The private security company would literally be giving intelligence reports to the local sheriff, as well as the FBI and the U.S. Marshals, talking about specific protesters, talking about specific leaders in camp. So it's not conspiratorial. They definitely know the players in each community. And
with us every day since they issued the orders, we were essentially taped off behind police tape, and there was one Roanoke County officer, one Virginia state trooper, and then one global security with us 24/7.
That's all you had?
I didn't show my ass like you did.
Oh. I had 2 county cops, 1 state trooper, and 1
Apparently, you're...
MVP security. And on occasion, I had 2 state police, 2 county cops, sometimes more.
so you're kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
I pissed them off. I pissed them off when they wouldn't give me my cigarettes, and they told me, Red, we put you 2 power bars and 2 bottles of water down at the base of your tree, and if you get hungry, you just scamper down here and get it. I had been without a cigarette for like 2.5 days, and that just pissed me off. And I said, I'll tell you what, guys, why don't you put my fucking cigarettes in my bucket that are right there, and I won't dump my poo bucket on you. And they went, oh, that's against the law. That's, you're going to do this and you're going to do that. And I said, well, actually, I'm just going to dump it off my tree stand. I'm not going to really aim it. And they said, oh, you're going to get in trouble. You're going to do this. And I went, I didn't say I was throwing it. Watch my fucking lips. I'm not going to throw it on you, but if you run under it, you'll get it on you. And they said, don't do it. I gave them 5 minutes. I said, fuck all of you. And I just dumped it off the side. My son was there, and he's like, no, Mom. No, Mom. No.
Tried to talk her out of it.
No.
He's like, right now you're facing 3 misdemeanors, and if any of that gets on these officers, you will be facing felonies. Please, for the love of God, do not do this. But you can't argue with her.
What do they call that? Felony fecal matter? Yeah.
Well-
Biological warfare.
Then I had an expanded police line
Yeah.
to where they almost made my visitors walk through the creek to get to me. I mean, they put them right on the edge of the bank, and they finally talked them into moving it up a foot to give them just enough walkway to get. But I had damn near an acre of police tape around me because I was armed and dangerous. I had a poo bucket, and I knew how to use it. And they didn't like that. And I was asked more than once if I had a weapon, because at one point I said, I do have a fork, and I know how to use it, and I will fork someone. And I was told that I could not fork anyone. And then the state police asked me, he was a cute guy, and I called him McDreamy. And he said, do you have a weapon up there? And I went, yes, I do. He goes, no, seriously. I said, I have a knife that's got a blade dick. I can cut you in the finger. And I said, and I also have a fork. And then after I had thrown, the day I was coming down, after I had thrown all my tarp down, all my bags, my clothes down, I was sitting on a board with the one tarp screwed on that I couldn't unscrew. That's all I had up there. And then my negotiator called me and said, Red, you don't have any weapons up there, do you? I'm like, what the fuck? No, I don't have any weapons. If I'd have had a gun, I'd have shot the guys with the chainsaws. No, I do not have weapons. My husband knows me and would not let me have one. Because he knew I would have probably used it. And I said, no, I do not have a weapon on me. And I'm sure if I'd have said yes, they could have taken me out the easy way in a body bag. Because I'm sure that's all they wanted to hear. And when I was in the tree set alone, I spent a couple days trying it out. Nobody knew I was up there, and I was up there alone for a couple days. And it hadn't turned bad again. It was in March. And I thought, well, this is pretty peaceful. And then they found out I was there, and everybody's like, someone's got to stay with her. And this 24-year-old darling girl going to Radford, getting her master's, said, I've got a sleeping bag, I'll stay. And I'm sitting there looking at her going, she's as big as a minute, she's all of 24, and she's going to guard me. And she stayed, and it got so cold that night. And she stayed with me all night on the ground by herself. And the next day, no one was available, and she stayed the next day with me. Only the next day, we saw 3 headlamps coming through the field to my camp, or my, treehouse. And she yells up at me. It's like 12 o'clock at night. She goes, Red, there's headlamps coming through the field headed this way. And she calls out to them, and nobody answers. And she goes, "What can I do?" Well, I can't get down without a ladder, and she can't. She's as big as a minute. She can't carry a 32-foot ladder over. And I said, "Honey, I don't know." And I figured she'd go hide. Hell, she picked up her flashlight and went after them. And I'm like, she's crazy. God love her. And they turned off their headlamps, headed back out, and we heard a car start and leave. Well, I've got a mountain man up here that likes to wander around, one with nature. And he stayed around my camp nonstop, and he was fabulous. And he would come in different ways. And he came in one morning, very, very early, and found 3 guys with night goggles behind me, watching me, and reported it to my husband. So we talked to the state police and the police, and they said, "No, we don't have people out with night goggles watching you." So I have no idea who was, keeping their eyes on me. I was pissed.
And we mentioned Trump, but I think people need to realize this is a Democrat governor of this state. Just became governor last year. I've read on him. He's called an environmentalist or environmentally friendly.
He's on the water board, which when I found that out infuriated me even more with his kind of willful ignorance of this and the damage of the pipelines. Like, oh, McAuliffe already signed a bunch of paperwork. I'm like, no, you still have the power to stop and or pause this pipeline. You have the power to call for the stream by stream analysis that should have been done. Step up to your role, essentially.
So Terry McAuliffe was the Virginia governor before. Ralph Northam was his lieutenant governor. McAuliffe basically rubber stamped it. Then Ralph Northam comes in. Like I said earlier, he did get money from oil and gas. I remember the DNC and everybody was rah rah. We need to get a Democrat back in the governor's house to continue from McAuliffe. But it just seems like almost like turning a blind eye. I've heard, he was quoted saying, "I agree with their right to protest," but I think your husband told me he called you a criminal or something like that.
I was breaking the law, and he was worried about my health because of the cigarette smoking.
In the elements.
But not worried about the explosion right under you.
No, he's not worried about the water I drink or the bomb that they're planting under me or the tree cutting and the wildlife. And, he is a doctor, so I guess he's going to build some more hospital for the burn patients and the cancer patients and the sickly. What was it, the town in West Virginia that was like 20 miles downstream? 60 people have cancer now. And the fracking's 20 miles upstream. And they're like, suddenly everybody has cancer. We've got 60 people this year that's developed cancer. Aw. So maybe he's building up his medical practice. I don't know. Maybe he just likes, of course, if he had been a good doctor, he probably wouldn't have been a governor. So maybe he wasn't a good doctor. Maybe he thinks he's helping the other doctors. Kind of like FERC's helping the other oil companies and gas companies. Maybe McAuliffe's just helping his fellow physicians get more business by poisoning Americans and their kids.
As I wrap up, I just want to ask, because I know you guys didn't ask to be the faces of this here, and now you're going on a bit of a tour this week for a couple days through the Commonwealth, because you said it the other day. Now we got their attention. Might not know all the answers, but what could people do? Because this isn't only here. I mean, they're putting pipelines through communities all over the country. I just read about they're putting a pipeline right next to a daycare center out west. They're putting pipelines through farmland. They're putting pipelines through Big Bend region in Texas, all over the place. What if people are watching that want to help, that want to take action? What do you recommend them doing so that it doesn't get to the point where they have to climb up a tree? Or should everybody just go climb up a tree?
No, that seemed to pretty effective.
I told one of my ground support, I said, I am ready to put a tent on every orange stake out here, which was the pipeline. And she started tweeting it, and people were like, got my tent, getting ready, coming, coming, coming. And then the tweet went to my husband. And my husband tweets back, whoa, what the hell? And they're like, well, yeah, it's your wife's idea. And I'm like, let's fucking overwhelm them. Let's just put the public right in their way and let them just keep arresting us. Nobody make bail. Nobody gets bailed out. We'll just let the county take care of all of us. They can lock up half of Roanoke County. And let's see how that works out. Maybe MVP can pay for our meals in the jailhouse. Maybe they can build us a bigger jailhouse to put all these criminal people. That was one of the things that set me off every fucking day, was when they looked at me and went, you're trespassing. And I'm like, I on my property, you're trespassing. Well, you're breaking the law because you're trespassing. Oh God. Every time they said that, I'm like, I'm on my property. MVP has not given me a fucking dime. All they've done is steamroll over us like we were piss ants. And I was told from the get-go, Red, that's Goliath, and they're going to swat you away like a gnat. And I think if MVP would have had a chance to make my body disappear, they wouldn't have hesitated for a minute. Because with this kind of money on the line, they've killed for less. And I really am surprised that I'm alive. And I might not be much longer. They might actually get their wish if someone can get in here fast enough.
You don't seem like an easy person to get rid of. You got a little feistiness to you, so that's a good thing.
They're going to have to try a little hard. But that's a lot of money behind them. And I actually considered, do we have to start another revolution? Do we have to? Do we have to bear in arms to protect our water, life? Is that what this country's coming to? I mean, they've already divided the country so many ways. And Trump is such a fucking idiot. You know, this land is made up of so many cultures. So many cultures. And now they're trying to have everybody fighting everybody. Leave us alone. We can all get along. We have everything in common with each other, but we all like our freedoms. So leave it alone. Quit dividing the country. Quit taking people's land. Miner was telling me Abney Gap, that they had done all this stuff on Abney Gap, where they'd gone through with the blue and white stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I drove down Callaway Road, and somebody's house, they had nice field in front of them, nice fence put up, and they had put the line of destruction not 5 feet from their front steps.
It's limits of disturbance, but that's the blue and white that she keeps mentioning are there's stakes in the ground that mark the limits of disturbance. That's where they're going to cut all the trees. It's wider than the pipeline itself because they need to be able to bring in the trucks and the equipment. So it's a huge swath of trees, but
Yeah, it's right up on people's doorsteps.
Yep.
And why would these people, I guess they figure we're all idiots. All of my kids are college educated. Most people up here are professional people. I am the dumb one with just a little bit of college behind me. But they think just because you're not wealthy, they can walk all over you. I don't like being walked on. I don't like being pushed aside. I don't like being treated as we don't count. There's a lot of good people up here, and they've spent all their lives paying for the right to live up here. Now they're getting to they want to avoid their fruits. And MVP is taking everything away from them. with our government's blessing. You know, how would they like it if we just started drilling next to the White House? You know, let's take out their shrubbery and their lawns and put it right up next to their steps. Or let's go to where they lived before they lived in the White House. I'll bet there's no pipelines going through their yards. I'll bet they have a nice retirement. Towers, what's he care? He lives in a fucking tower. You know, wherever he goes, he lives in a tower. You know, let's do something to them like this. I bet it wouldn't happen. They wouldn't stand for it. They would change the laws quickly if it involved them going through what we're going through. But no, that'll never happen. But is the next thing that we have to import going to be water? The way they're going through our water and destroying it and poisoning it, is that what the next big fight's going to be over? Is getting water that we can drink?
Well, I say it a lot, but there's a reason all these fancy hedge fund guys in New York, that's the number one investment right now, water. Because many people think that's what the next war will be over.
I think so too. I think we're going to be fighting over water. And I think it's going to kill a lot of people. And President Trump and Ralph Northam can just go ahead and they can wear that badge. You know, they can wear it. They will be known as the people that sunk America. Well, Northam and a few others, but Trump's going to be right there near the top. You know, and he's getting a lot of support from a lot of big companies. You know, the coal people didn't want to go back to work. They're like, coal ash, black lung. Come on, people. We did away with this. We could have good jobs in Roanoke with solar and wind power, but they don't want to do that. My trees they took down, you know what they're going to do with those? Same thing they're doing in Franklin County right now. Cut the tops off of it and have bonfires every night. They said if we would have signed an easement, that they would have pulled all these trees out and put them wherever we wanted them. But because we haven't signed an easement, they're going to come in here and destroy that good wood, which is worth money to a lot of people. That's nice veneer wood they dropped. But it's not important to them. They're a very wasteful company. You know, and my husband is a civil engineer, and he's like, they just dropped all those trees in their own way just to get them dropped. And the migratory birds, they sent two people with sticks almost jogging through the woods looking in the trees.
Nope. They looked at the ground. They didn't
To
look in
see
the
if
trees.
there were any nesting birds, and then the chainsaws followed them. So that was really efficient. They forgot to look on the ground at my whippoorwills that were nesting. So, you know, they're doing a bang up job of, you know, keeping things right for the environment. I'm just fed up with all the bastards. I'm done with them.
I want to thank you for taking so much time. My audience, I keep hearing it in comments. They think you're actual, American heroes. So do I. I think that it's kind of sad when you have a corporate media with so many resources. Yeah, they come down like when you're up in the tree and when it's kind of a standoff and there's a story, but then it kind of goes quiet, the cameras leave, and people are left to deal with the destruction of their land, water, and there's not as many cameras on that when it's not as, you know, confrontation erupting. We saw that in Standing Rock. I remember I kept going back and back, and the final time I was there was no media there because there wasn't a chance that the cops and the oil company were going to, the water protectors and the cops were going to have a standoff. So I'll definitely stay on this. And the hashtag, if you want to follow news, is Stand with Red. Hashtag Stand with Red. And anything else you want to say before we end?
Recently, we had over at one of our neighbors, there was a guy in a fur vest walking around. And some people approached him and asked him what he was doing. And then they recognized him. He was MVP security, walking around in a FERC vest. So they would think someone from FERC was paying attention. I thought that was pretty cool too.
So the oil company wearing the FERC vest, which kind of wraps it up because they're all one and the same, really. It's a regulatory body that's essentially working for the oil company. I mean, if that's not, like, that's mafia level stuff there. But it's out in the open here, and I'll keep covering it. If you like this reporting, if you like us going out into the country, covering real stories, definitely support us so we can get a camera person and better equipment. As you see, like I'm bent over like that. So patreon.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports or paypal.me/Jordan Sheridan Reports. We're going to be here for a few more days speaking with other people. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thanks. I'd love to hear some of the devastation.
Yeah.